If you want to know about clearing samples, this is the video to watch. What's up guys, Brandon here from KDMR Music, the channel making you a more successful musician through videos about music marketing, music strategy, and music business in general, just like this one. If you're interested in that type of content, consider subscribing to the channel. Now, today we're talking about sample clearances because, well, Beyonce apparently sampled Kelis, and Kelis wasn't happy about it, which led Beyonce to just remove the whole sample from the album. And people were just wondering, like, in the meantime, well, how did Beyonce make a song from Kelis's song without Kelis knowing about it? How is that legal? Is that okay? Is that ethical? Well, we're going to talk about exactly how sample clearances work so that you can have the answer to that question and so that you can put it to good use with your own music if you are a musician who uses other music to make yours, right? Now, before we get into this video is brought to you by DistroKid. DistroKid is the best way to get your music on Apple Music, Spotify, iTunes, and all the other DSPs. For one low annual price, as low as $19.99 a year, you could upload unlimited tracks. And DistroKid doesn't just put your music on these services. They've got tools to help you get on playlists, to help you with promotion after the fact and before the fact. So you definitely want to jump on DistroKid. Like I said, they are the best way to get your music on iTunes. Now, if you have not joined DistroKid already, great news. You can use the link in the description below and save 7% on your annual subscription. Hope to see you there. And thanks to DistroKid for sponsoring today's video. Now, like I said, we're talking about sample clearances today because this whole Beyonce and Kelis situation has everybody in a tizzy, as they say. And so the biggest question is, well, how does Beyonce sample Kelis without Kelis knowing? And we're going to tackle that now. Now, in order to talk about sample clearances, we got to talk about music copyrights. And I've talked about music copyrights before in a different video, but we're going to talk about it again because, hey, times change, people change. You may have never seen it. So in short, what we know as the music copyright is actually kind of shorthand term for two different copyrights. Now, every song that you ever heard has two copyrights. There's a copyright for the actual sound recording, also known as the master. And then there's a copyright for the underlying composition, the lyrics and the music, right? Also known as the publishing. Now, those two rights come together to form the entire music copyright. And when other people need to use your music, whether it's to play it in their venue on stage or on stage somewhere, whether it's to print lyric sheets, whether it's to post your lyrics on a website like genius.com, all of those different uses are a portion or use a different portion of the copyright and require a transfer of funds, royalties, fees, in order to make it happen. And then sampling music is no different. Now, sampling is kind of unique in that it uses both of the copyrights simultaneously, right? You're using the recording in order to make music. But of course, that recording is of an underlying composition. So there's two different types of things that need to be cleared. So now we've got that part out of the way. If Beyonce, or let's say I have a song and it's called The Greatest Song in the World. So if I wrote the greatest song in the world and I was signed to a major label like Atlantic Records, right? I wrote the greatest song in the world for Atlantic Records back in the day. I was signed to a slave contract where I gave away all ownership of my masters and 85% of my publishing. Actually, let's say I gave away all of my publishing because I just wanted the signing bonus, right? But I wrote this song and it's a really big song, but I don't own any of it, right? Well, let's say Drake decides he wants to sample the greatest song in the world. What's he got to do? Well, I sold all of my publishing and my master recording rights to Atlantic Records. So all Drake's got to do is call Atlantic Records. They say, sure, you can use this song that we own all outright. All you got to do is pay us $100,000 and give us 15% of the publishing on your brand new song." To which Drake says, "Okay, sure." And now Drake's got a whole new song sampling the greatest song in the world that I wrote, but he never had to call me to do it, right? When it comes to sample clearances, you've got to call the rights owners. It could be a courtesy to call the songwriter if they own the song or if they don't own the song, but you're not obligated to. The only people you need permission from are the people who are listed in the liner notes of that record. And that is where the Kelis drama kind of spans from. Apparently, she does not own any of the publishing on her song. And of course, she didn't own the master recording. In most traditional record deals, the record label owns the master recording outright. And so in some cases, it reverts back to the artist after a certain number of years. In some cases, they may give the artist a percentage of that master. But in nearly all cases, the record label owns the majority of that master. Now, again, that's just a sound recording. And it's fair because in most cases, the record label is who's paying for that recording to be made. They're paying for the studio time. They're paying for the musicians. They're paying for the session vocalists. They're paying for all of it. A lot of times they even pay to put the songwriter and a producer together and see what magic happens, right? The record label honestly facilitates the whole process in the major labels, or at least they used to. A lot of times that stuff is done at home by artists and their in-house teams and all that. And that's a different conversation for a different day. But the record label generally owns the master recording. And a lot of times they do end up owning a portion of the publishing of the songwriter's credits and fees, right? They typically own a portion of that as well, depending on how well the artist negotiates their contract. So if you do own a portion of your song, well, the good thing about sample clearances is everyone who owns a portion of the song has to sign off on it in order for the sample to be legally cleared to use. That's why a lot of times if you hear an album that leaks and there's a song that you really like, and then when the album comes out 2 months later, that song is no longer on it. Yeah, it could have been that the artist was just like, oh, let me give them something better since they already heard that one. But it's most likely a sample clearance issue. They couldn't get in touch with everybody that needed to be contacted to release the usage of that song. So that's a thing. That's a thing. Now, there are full companies who are dedicated to helping you clear samples, right? Because the hardest part of sample clearance is contacting the original rights owners. It's easy if it's owned by Atlantic Records or something, but if it's owned by Atlantic Records and, Bruce Wayne in Timbuktu, who wrote a song one time, was smart enough to ask for 10% ownership and then moved to a private island and has never been heard from since, right? If you can't reach Bruce Wayne, you're not going to be able to use that song. So there are companies that do sample clearance. The one that really comes to name, I think, is DMG clearances. You see them in like so many hip hop album liner notes because that's pretty much all they do. Deborah Manis Gardner, I believe is her name. So shout out to you, Deborah, if you're watching. But anyway, that's how sample clearance works. And that is how Beyonce could sample a song without ever telling Kelis. And that's how this whole drama got started. Got it? So look, if you are making music, you need to make sure you got all your I's dotted, your T's crossed. Make sure your samples are cleared or just don't use them. Would I suggest you reaching out to people who aren't credited on the songs? Not necessarily. I mean, you could, but chances are they're not going to get mad. Chances are they will chalk it up to, hey, that's just how the game goes. But every once in a while, somebody might get upset. I mean, I think Kelis has a right to be upset. She feels like she was jerked out of her ownership percentages. Who am I to say that she's wrong for that? I wasn't there. I know a lot of young, impressionable artists are sort of tricked out of, or tricked into selling rights to things that they have no business giving away. But that's what I'm here for, to help you understand the game so that you don't end up on the short end of the stick years later. But anyway, I hope that answered your questions about sample clearances and this whole Beyonce Kelis drama. This isn't a gossip site, so I'm not going to ask you how you feel about it. But if you do have another question about the music business, leave it in the comments below. I just might answer it in an upcoming video. Until then, be safe, be well, keep dreaming, and work hard to make those music business dreams your reality. Peace.